Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in. Usually for the last week of class, I mean, it's kind of dedicated towards presentations and not a lot of content, but I still wanted to go ahead and make a quick lecture about a tool that I find very useful in my own work and in my consulting. So hopefully you'll find it useful as well. So most of you are probably familiar with the balanced scorecard in some way or in some form with with your own positions. Maybe you've dealt with it before. It's a ubiquitous management tool by now that really most consulting firms, most project managers actually use to um, define metrics and define KPIs for various initiatives within the organization. So it's a fantastic tool, really cool. But the reason that I include a short lecture on the balanced scorecard within the corporate responsibility class is because you can actually integrate a lot of CSR goals, a lot of social responsibility stuff in with the balanced scorecard. It integrates really well. And yeah, here. So we'll see it really quickly. So I'll start off. I'll do a quick review of the balanced scorecard for those of you that are not familiar with this tool. It's going to be a very high level, very just quick and basic overview of this tool. If it if you think that it's something interesting to you, get in touch with me. I would be happy to provide you with more readings and other links and things like that. I mean, the Balanced Scorecard Institute um, has an entire certification that you can get in this, so it's kind of cool. All right, so really quickly, Balanced Scorecard. Ultimately, what the Balanced Scorecard was derived to do was to create some sort of cohesion, okay, between what you're doing and how what you're doing is advancing your organization towards your strategic goals. All right, so you have these overarching strategic goals and it seeks alignment. Right, how are these individual initiatives doing, or yeah, how are they contributing towards the achievement of these particular strategic goals? Okay, so the reason that it is so popular and it's very strong is because, I mean, typically we look at financial measures of performance, like your return on investment, your return on assets, profit loss, all that jazz. Okay, and this actually balances these quantitative measures with these qualitative non-financial measures alongside with short and long-term measures, right? Which is really cool in terms of giving a complete picture of organizational performance. And what I really like about it too is because it has performance indicators, these outcome measures, these or what we would call lagging indicators, and it balances that with these causal indicators or leading indicators, these performance drivers in this particular sense. And a good balanced scorecard is clear, it's concise, and it gives just enough data to give you this complete picture of organizational performance. All right, and ultimately leading to strategic alignment across the organization. All right, so if we look at kind of the view of the organization here, we can kind of conceptualize it as a pyramid. All right, so at the top of the organization, we have our mission, we have our vision, values, that type of thing, the things that we're exposed to every day, right? Everybody talks about the mission of the organization. But how do we get from here, the mission up top? In fact, I'm going to turn on the laser pointer here. How do we get from this mission up top down to the very ground level? Now, this is what many of you are concerned with in your day-to-day jobs, right? What sort of project, action plans, strategic initiatives, things, what should we put in place, all right, to ultimately feed up and accomplish the overarching organizational mission. Well, the idea here is that your strategic initiatives that you are implementing at the base of this pyramid here, okay, feed up into various performance measures, all right, which then support various strategic initiatives or strategic objectives, I mean to say. And these strategic objectives can be organized into these strategic themes, all right? And then these strategic themes or pillars of excellence ultimately give rise to various perspectives and the vision and mission and values of the organization. All right. So what you should understand is that the things that you're doing on the ground, your day-to-day projects, all right, ultimately should feed up into and support the overarching mission of the organization. And this is what the balanced scorecard attempts to do, is create this level of alignment. All right, so let's just do a quick overview of it. The balanced scorecard looks or categorizes organizational objectives into 4 different perspectives. All right, so first we have the financial perspective. You should very much be familiar with that. You know, what should we do? What do we have to do in order to create some sort of stable economic value within our organization? Okay, then there's the customer perspective. This looks at things relating to our customers and what do we have to do in relation to them, okay? And what do our customers need from us in order to purchase from our organization? And then how are we supplying those requirements? How are we creating that value proposition for our customers? Internal business processes. These are all focused on what we're doing on the inside internally in order to drive these other elements. And then learning and growth. Okay, this comes with, in some models, this comes with some different names, whatnot, but usually it's like organizational learning and growth. These are these high-end kind of meta variables, the things like the infrastructure that we're putting into place in order to be able to support all of these other things. Okay, so what are we doing with regards to these 4 different perspectives? Okay, now what's very interesting is if you kind of place these in a hierarchy, and again, so in this particular model, learning and growth is referred to as organizational capacity, but it's basically the same thing. Okay, if you align them in a hierarchy like this, so org capacity, internal processes, customers, and then financial at the top, all right, we can map everything that we're doing, all right, and create kind of a hierarchical process, right, that ultimately gets us to a higher end goal. So if the higher end goal is to increase profitability in our organization, how do we get there? Okay. Well, if we take a look at this little map, and then if we start going downwards, okay, then the question is how. Think of your kind of incessant little child, right, that keeps asking you why. You know, why? Like, why are there clouds? Well, it's because of, moisture accumulation in the atmosphere. Well, why? Well, because, this is how physics works. Well, why? Because, well, and ultimately you get to just rudimentary basics of, well, some things just are, right? And this is exactly what we see with this here. So if our ultimate goal is to increase profitability, the question is how? Well, we increase profitability, according to this map, by lowering costs. Well, how do we lower costs? Well, we do that by increasing our process efficiency. Well, how do we do that? Well, we do that by improving our knowledge and skills at the employee level. Okay? Now, this same map tells a story from the bottom up. But if we're going from the bottom up, then the question becomes an if-then statement. All right? So if we improve our tools and technology, then we will increase process efficiency. If we increase process efficiency, then we will lower cycle time. All right, this is the amount of time to like service a customer or produce a particular product, right? If we lower cycle time, we will lower our consumer wait time. If we lower customer wait time, we will improve customer retention. If we improve customer retention, then we will increase revenue. If we increase revenue, then we will increase profitability. All right. So ideally, we can see how any initiative from even the basic level, such as just initiating additional training in terms of skills for our employees, can ultimately cycle up, okay, and lead us to our overarching goal. Now, what's cool about this is that we have, see these arrows here, we have a lot of causal assumptions. We are assuming that lower cycle time is going to increase, lower wait time, and then lower wait time is going to improve customer retention, right? So we can actually gather data about this, all right, and then make strategic assumptions. We can say, oh, wow, well, we lowered wait time, but customer retention didn't improve. All right, in that case, then there must be some sort of other variable in place here, something that we're missing, or just this hypothesized linkage just doesn't exist. Okay, or maybe it does, and our hypothesis is correct. Okay, either way, it allows us to get at these higher order strategic questions. Okay, how do we improve customer retention? Well, and that jazz. All right, so really, really kind of cool and efficient tool in this regard. So some examples of things that we traditionally measure with the balanced scorecard. So on the learning and growth perspective, we typically measure things like employee satisfaction, retention, productivity, IT support, IT infrastructure, just like these overarching things that really drive other performance variables in the organization. Internal, innovation, operations variables like cycle time and stuff like that. Customer, you're probably familiar with a lot of these measures. We typically measure things like satisfaction, loyalty, retention. Okay, all the the common players in this regard, and then sure, whatever financial measure that you're used to, profitability, profit and loss growth, return on assets, revenue growth mix, cost reduction, that type of stuff. So just kind of some examples of measures that we use at each individual level. Okay, now what's cool with this is you can kind of group those individual bubbles, those individual operational bubbles vertically and create what we would call a strategic theme. All right, so here we can see that we're trying to increase expertise, improve internal efficiency, and then ultimately reduce costs. Okay, well, we can group that under this column of operational excellence. Okay, same thing with this. Optimize technology, increase acquisitions, improve customer experience, increase profits. Okay, it can be classified as technological leadership. So not only are we going up in our little strategic map, but we can also group these vertically, all right, in order to create some sort of logic, some thematic logic, okay, within these variables here. All right. I I spend a lot of time on Southwest. I have some stuff on the website where I talk about this, so I won't belabor this just to keep this video to kind of a reasonable length. But I have this kind of mini lecture where I talk about Southwest's essential value chain system and how it fits into a balanced scorecard system. Same thing with here, but so I'll go past that. I will draw attention to an example here with regards to a hospital. Okay, so this is not as kind of hyper-connected as the example strategy map that I just gave, but it's essentially the same thing. We have operational measures grouped into strategic, these kind of strategic funnels, these strategic pillars, all right? And we can see logically how we get to the top. Now this one's organized a little bit differently, okay? So we can see that kind of financial is subordinate to the purpose statement. So balanced scorecards come in a lot of different flavors, especially if you're operating a nonprofit here. But the logic is the same. We can see that, okay, how are they getting up to here? All right. How are we getting to this position of wanting to provide unparalleled clinical care to patients, conducting cutting edge research to eradicate disorders, and developing advanced skills in tomorrow's medical specialists? Okay. How do we get to this ultimate end goal? All right. So if we go start here and go down, remember the leading question when you go down is how. Well, how? Well, we do that by growing revenue. Well, how do we grow revenue? Well, we do that by attracting research funding. Well, how do we do that? By developing residents, fellows, and students into tomorrow's leaders. Well, how do we do that? By recruiting and retaining the most targeted individuals. And you can follow that down kind of any of these pillars here. But ultimately, everything that we're doing, so all of our initiatives centered on recruiting and retaining, all of our initiatives set around setting expectations and holding teams accountable, and all of our investments in our infrastructure, hopefully are somehow supporting these various strategic pillars here. Okay. Now, what's really cool is that we can take your generic strategy-oriented balanced scorecard and we can implement like social value creation into this balanced scorecard here. Okay, so here's one that is centered around sustainability. And the question I'm asking, or what I usually ask, is what story does this strategy map tell us? Okay, well, ultimately for our organization, we want to increase profitability, right? Well, according to this, how are we increasing profitability? Well, we're doing that by reducing risk. How do we reduce risk? We are improving green value for our customers. Okay, well, how do we improve green value for customers? Well, we are improving product eco-efficiency. Okay, how are we doing that? Well, we are improving our sustainability operations or improving our sustainability culture. Okay, so these are the overarching themes, the overarching operationalizations of things that we want to do. The next step is to translate those into measurable outcomes. Okay, so here's the strategy map. This is just the text version of written down of our objectives. But here, this is the most crucial and in some cases requires a bit of creativity on the part of somebody that is implementing one of these balanced scorecards. Okay, so how might we measure innovation? All right, how can we, get this into something that we can kind of quantify? Well, in many cases, innovation can be kind of operationalized or implied by the amount of revenue that we're garnering from new products. Okay. Operational efficiency could be measured maybe by waste reduction or greenhouse gas emissions or kilowatt hours of power used for dollar of sales or something like that. Okay, so all sorts of different things. Maybe an IT maturity score for our information technology infrastructure. Okay, so this is the key element: is deriving things that we can actually measure. All right. Things that we can actually measure that help us to see if we are attaining our goals on our strategy map. Now, when we do this, when we do the measure, then that, ultimately it allows us to develop targets. So, maybe we want to have a 65% reduction in waste year over year or something like. I mean, that's kind of a lofty goal, but or 98% consumer or stakeholder satisfaction or something like that. Okay, cool. So if this is our targets, then we can easily list out what our initiatives are. All right. Now these are the on the ground, day-to-day, like operational initiatives that we are going to undertake. All right, in order to hit these targets, improve these measures, and then ultimately enhance our strategy map and get us to this top level here, increase profitability. But you can see how any sort of social thing can easily be integrated into this particular into your overarching business strategy here. Now, I give an example of Patagonia. So this is an actual balanced scorecard that's published by Patagonia. And this one's admittedly like a decade old, but they put it out in their annual report, and I loved it, so I grabbed it. Okay, so you can see that they have various strategic themes. Okay, so here they're calling it operational excellence, customer intimacy, product leadership, environmental stewardship. All right. Now, we can, if we do from the bottom up, it's an if-then statement. So we can ask ourselves, okay, how is Patagonia getting to this ultimately like top goal here of growing revenue? All right. Well, we can ask ourselves, all right, creating lifetime employees. All right. If we create lifetime employees, then what happens? Well, more time with the company, better understanding, or sorry, more experience with customers and their needs and their values, what they want, their problems. It helps us to better understand the customer. Better understanding the customer allows us to do what? Well, in this case, Patagonia is saying that it helps us to solve their problem or to inspire innovation. All right? If we understand our customers, we know how to create products, all right, in order to better serve them. If we know how to create products in order to better serve them, we know how to reduce our our impact, environmental impact and footprint, okay, which is going to lead us to creating greater environmental goodwill, which is going to create more customer value, which is ultimately going to grow revenue. If you're not familiar with Patagonia, they are a clothing company that is very heavily focused on sustainability, environmental protection, and things like that. Okay, so it's a clear picture about how they're getting from point A to point X here up at the top. Okay, with traditional business measures and traditional business initiatives, but also integrating things like environmental stewardship into their overarching business model. So this complements a philosophy of shared value creation quite well. All right, it really cool. Okay, so that is okay. I won't go into this. This is an on-the-ground assignment that I do with my students here, where we kind of map this out into a balanced scorecard. So I won't go into it. But yeah, so if you utilize balanced scorecard, if you've are familiar with it, if you talked about it or been trained in it, you can easily implement the things that we've talked about in this course, like sustainability goals, stakeholder engagement goals, with your balanced scorecard. And I would encourage you to do it in order to better create shared value here. So yeah, if you have any questions or you want like suggestions in terms of readings, things like that, please let me know. I'd be happy to discuss them with you. Anyways, enjoy the final week of the course. Very light this week. Just finish up, or just focus on finishing up your final assignment, your final case study, and then I will get grades posted as well. So thank you all. I hope you have a fantastic week.